Check, check, check.
Okay, just first the two sessions are there. First this one, and then she will continue with the second one.
Hi, I welcome you all to the first international conference on sustainable education. We would now be starting with this session, which actually has two themes. One is the empowering conservation through citizen science, engaging communities for a sustainable future. And along with that, we would also be doing a conference on the theme impact assessment for environment education programs. I would now be inviting the panelist and our chairperson for this session on the dais. Can we please have Miss Shonali Chanzira, Senior Manager, Environment Education on stage? Can we have a great round of applause, please? I now invite Miss Amreen, who's the lead of Youth and Citizen Engagement Programs, WWF India. She'll be joining us shortly. Meanwhile, I would like to invite Ms. Neha Raghav, who's the director at WWF. Can we have a great round of applause, please? Moving forward, I would also like to invite Ms. Priyanka Singh, manager at PMEL Education. A great round of applause. Now on to our panelist and a moderator for this session. Thank you so much.
We have planned the session in a way. Working? Hello? Yeah. All right. Okay, so quickly, just about a little bit about myself. I lead the environment education work at WWF India. And as you all must be aware that WWF India is one of country's leading conservation organization. And we have been working in the country since 1969. It's a global organization and a part of the international network of Worldwide Fund for Nature. And we started out in Switzerland, Gland, in the year 1961. And yeah, so as you can see on the screen, one of the world's most recognized logos is the panda. And we are, our mission is it reads fairly simple, but one of the most challenging tasks. We have been talking this ever since, the whole movement of environmentalism started. But over the years, we have only seen things going from bad to worse, right? Our mission is to stop the degradation of planet's natural environment and build a future in which human lives in harmony with nature. This particular vision is something that drives all the work that we do across the country. And we have been talking about this over decades, but we haven't really seen things changing. And one of the biggest reasons is lack of education and awareness. And that sort of puts a lot of emphasis and importance on the fact that education is the crux of all the conservation work that we want to do. And hence, we are, sort of all together at this sustainability conference, right? Not talking much about this, I'll just quickly talk about the education pillars. And let me tell you that WWF has actually run the Nature Clubs program for over 3 decades, right? And soon after that, the Eco Club movement by the government of India was started in early 2000. And right now, we have, schools across the country who are a part of the Eco Club movement. And they have been doing some activities, but we do not have any data that sort of can say that, this is the kind of impact that we have created through those Eco Club activities. There is no place where you can actually go and say that it has led to, enhancement in knowledge by this percentage, or, by means of these many actions, we have managed to save these many rivers. So in this data-driven world, how else you measure impact? And that's the whole idea of this session. All right. So we, in 2015, we sort of conducted an extensive survey, and we sort of realized that the scenario, this entire scene is changing now. The way children are learning, the way the environmental problems are sort of mounting, the way teachers are teaching, the classrooms had changed. There was a lot of technology infusion that has already taken place. And we have to, sort of reinvent and reimagine education. The way we are doing education per se, and of course, sustainability education. And that's how we came out with 6 different pillars, which cater to different kinds of audiences and has a different kind of an approach, right? There may be a program that caters to a wider range of audience, but it has a different approach. All right, so what you see is formal education system wherein we build the capacity of teachers, where we infuse environmental themes into the school curriculum, which in some manner is already happening. You know that EVS is very much there. And of course, again, there's a lot of shift that is happening with new NEP and new curriculum framework, which has come, and, the new syllabus, which is being formulated currently, as I'm speaking. So of course, these sort of come into formal education. There is one component that we have added to it, which is school estate enhancement. All right. And why is it so important? If you have to set the norms in a household, what do? If you have to you have to change the way the entire house looks and feels. To set up a particular rule in the house, the entire family comes together. They say, okay, no overspending. I'm just giving you one odd example. Okay, no overspending. But for that, these are the 4 things which will be practiced in the house by every member of the family. And that's where bringing sustainability into school operations and practices is one of the most important things. And it is also one of the most tangible ways to tell a child that doing these 4 things will help you save resources. By saving paper, unless we tell the child a number, we have managed to save 500 rupees because we purchased 5 less bundles of paper. How else will you? This is the best way to tell a child. Show them what you are saying, right? Instead of just telling them, we need to save paper, let's do that, let's write on both sides of paper, let's recycle paper. But what is going to be the most convincing thing to get them into action is to give them something tangible, something that they can see, something that they can measure. What you cannot measure is a waste, right? And that's how we added a very important component. And this is what, for past 8 years, we have been sort of driving, pushing forward, make the 360-degree movement in a school system. And the best way to do that is to work on the school estate, right? To adopt sustainable practices within the school ecosystem and show them how change can happen. So this is what we do with formal education system. People for Planet is a youth program where we create opportunities for young people to, to take up some projects. Of course, as young people, they are so busy with their studies, they will not have time. So accordingly, we have sort of designed this program where if a young person wants to contribute a few hours of their weekend to the cause of environment, be a part of some plantation drive, be a part of some cleanliness drive, some urban biodiversity park, I want to use my hours meaningfully. Can I get an opportunity where I can spend these 2 hours meaningfully and also at the same time, help the planet? This is what this does. We have projects and we do a lot of volunteer projects wherein, and it is happening across the country. So these opportunities are out there. And these are also very tangible. How you can sensitize an individual. And this is very, it's not possible to measure the contribution that they have made by participating in these events, right? But data sort of speaks. We say that, we work with 30,000 individuals across the country who have cleaned 500 parks in, across the country, and they have taken out 200 kgs of plastic. How do these numbers sound to you? It just automatically you're able to visualize everything, right? And that's how, we do our programs. We do ECHO with colleges. ECHO is basically an innovation project based on one of the SDGs. And the students are expected to look for a local problem, propose a solution for it, come up with a proper prototype, and present their cases and show impact. And that also the impact will be most, sort of visible when it is in terms of data and statistics. All right, so that's something that we do. Nature Connect program is some of the eco trail programs that we do. We do workshops for children. We run a course called Cool Conservationist course, where children, every year during their summer break come and join us for these courses. Then we have been running this challenge since 2008. It's called the Wild Wisdom Global Challenge. Initially, it was all about numbers, people, how many children participated. But now we have sort of transformed it into a journey where they all have to come and register at a platform, do some actions, and every action will mean some digital or, fake money. We call it yucca money. All right. So children understand the best when you tell them in terms of money, right? Instantly they understand, because even a kid, little 5-year-old kid understands that if you get 10 rupees, you will be able to get whatever you want out of those 10 rupees. So if you save 10 rupees, it means a lot. It makes a lot of sense to me, right? So that's what, we have sort of done with this particular product to drive people into this particular field. One Planet Academy is a digital resource center. Again, with any digital platform, Google Analytics will help you, will give you a lot of insights. These many people visited the website. These many people sort of engaged in one particular content, spend 5 minutes, 7 minutes. All those data is quite measurable. And most of you are all from the new age, the digital age. So you will all know, what it means to sort of make sense out of Google Analytics and get some data points from there. Green literature is again a vertical where we sort of, develop publications on various environmental themes and set up green libraries, right? So if you visit WWF India's website, you will be able to sort of find this, and at the nature store, you will be able to purchase our publications if you're interested, right? Moving on from here, why are we there's so much of buzz around environment education, and sitting here in the conference, International Conference for Sustainability Education, we often, sort of misinterpret the exact meaning of environment education. For us, environment education is teaching about water, teaching about flora and fauna in the classroom through a textbook. Most of us, in most of the Indian schools, I think so, there would be hardly a school or two across the entire country which would teach environment education in the truest spirit. What are you making the child do? Cram up things? In the classroom, you're talking about nature. There is a bird out there on that tree. What am I doing? That's not environment education. Environment education is about building awareness, about building attitudes. How does it make a difference to me? You will not see any child throwing garbage in a clean classroom. They'll find a spot in the school, in some corner of the school, where there is already some garbage lying. They'll go and throw it very secretly and come and say, then who did it? Right? So building attitudes, taking ownership, responsibility, and taking some positive action. I put a lot of stress upon the word positive action. The reason being, sometimes we do actions which may have a negative impact, and we may still be sort of living in a world believing that we did some good for the planet. And recycling is one such thing. When we know, it can be recycled, let me buy another plastic bottle, so what, it can be recycled, right? It gives you a sense of something happening. It gives you a sense of action, but it may not be positive action because you've already done the damage by purchasing that plastic bottle. All right. So to break it down further, it's very important, knowledge. And when I say knowledge, I mean scientific knowledge, right? I will take this opportunity to say something that hurts me, that pains me. Very often you must have seen in the morning that, schools making seed bombs. If there is a school sitting here, I'm really sorry. I am making that point. I was also one of the jury members, but still I would like to say that seed bombs, has anyone ever thought what's happening with seed bombs? Has anyone ever thought what's happening with the eco bricks, where we, sort of push plastics inside plastic bottles, which could otherwise be recyclable. A resource which is otherwise useful has been wasted. All right, by making that brick, we are just putting it back into the environment in its most dangerous form, right? So scientific knowledge have you thought through, and that is the reason why in the morning I said I wanted to say a lot, but since there was limited time, I said follow the principles of design thinking. When I said that, design thinking allows us to have hundreds of ideas, but it, at the same time, it tells you to test those ideas at a small scale so that you know what impact it may have on the environment when it is taken to scale, right? And that is exactly what happened with plastics, an invention that was meant to save the mankind, save the elephants, in fact, because the ivory was in fact used for making snooker balls at that point of time. Someone wanted to sort of save the elephants, has ended up becoming one of the biggest menaces for us. It still continues to be very useful because a lot of medical equipment is still made of plastic. It's very useful over there, but it's been made into a mess now. It's become one of the biggest issues that, there are movements, no plastic, plastic free and stuff, right? So it needs to, a lot of scientific information is required. A lot of testing is required for us to know that when you scale a particular idea, it will not have a negative impact. So it's important to have hundreds of ideas, but we have to, that idea which goes out in the world at a big scale needs to be thought through, right? Technology is helping us moving really fast, but I think so it's time we all hold back, think. So that is one of the most important things. Sensitivity and concern. Do I have concern for the environment? How is that going to be? And also, if I am to ask you, I'm doing a session on measurement and evaluation and impact assessment. How do we measure this? How do we measure this? It will be measured through actions taken by people. It will be measured through actions that are taken by people beyond the school premises. When there is no one watching, what am I doing, right? So I think so these are some of the things that, need to be a part of environment education: participation, skills, attitudes, and behaviors. So these are the important components of environment education. But how do we say that we have built the knowledge? How do we say that the attitudes and behavior shift has taken place? Skills, people are empowered. They have the skill a skill as simple as, since I'm talking so much about plastic, let me also tell you, people do not have the basic skill of segregating the plastic. We want everybody to segregate plastic, but people are not aware that there are different grades of plastic and they all cannot be recycled together. There is some plastic which is recyclable, there is some which is not. This is as simple as that. Are we doing segregation in the right manner? It's such an important skill that each and every person must know. It should be taught in school. There should be maybe systems set up in school where children actually go and do segregation on their own. There should be sessions and conversation. But is our school allowing us, giving us enough freedom and opportunity to have those conversations? I'm not sure. Some school, of course, but yeah, it's just taught like a subject, one classroom, and then that's where it ends, right? Where is it going from there? So, and that is the reason, action leading to a positive impact is one of the most important things. And it all has to sort of come together. We tell children, I said in the beginning, we tell children, do this, do that, do that, do that. But they say, why should I do this? I don't know what happens. And you often say that, what is it going to lead to? Right? We often question people. So that's what a child sort of needs. And that's where, impact assessment or monitoring and evaluation of environment education sort of comes in. What are the various models of delivery? Formal education system is where environmental themes are infused in the school curriculum, where the textbooks are designed in a way that it touches upon relevant environmental topics. Water is, of course, taught in the classroom, but it is taught with a very science kind of a point of view. But are we also talking about where my water is? How localized can it be? Right? It's just a textbook which is followed, but how can we think about where my water is coming from? Me sitting here in Delhi, where is water coming from? Not just the taps, but beyond that, right? It talks about, so formal education will include subjects related to environment and sustainability. They are included in course courses. That's what the formal education system would entail. And also building the capacity of educators and school teachers through different environment awareness programs that we sort of do. And you see that in capacity building is one of the important components of all our program. These are some of the things. And in the informal education system, what are the kind of interventions we have? And I showed you the 6 pillars that we have. We do programs where we enhance skills among children, youth, and citizens through field observations. And this is what Shonali is going to talk about in the next section of the presentation. Engaging community through citizen science projects, nature trails, nature camps, volunteering for cleanups and plantations. These are some informal education programs that we can do. And these two types of interventions can sort of cater to a wide range of audiences. Moving further, what are the goals of monitoring and evaluation? So this is basically a theory of change chart where various interventions, EE means environment education interventions, which are targeting towards informing people about the scientific facts, empowering people to take action. And how do we do that? By building their knowledge and awareness, by skill and capacity building programs. There should be on-ground action models, and hence, the school estate program is so key, and attitude and behavior. And all of this will eventually lead to children, youth, and citizens creating impact for a sustainable planet. And what is the outcome? The moment you give exam, you want to know what scores have I got, right? And that's where we need to have some data-driven output for our interventions, right? So all of this is driven by, of course, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. It's a blueprint of the sustainable future that we are looking at. The goals are 2030 is the year by when we are supposed to achieve it. I'm sure we are, sort of far behind in achieving those, but nevertheless, we are still looking at getting as close as possible to the goals that we have set out for ourselves, right? So these are the ideas, how we create impact through our interventions with a multi-pronged approach for a variety of audiences, right? And next, I'm going to invite my colleague Priyanka, who leads the monitoring and evaluation work for us, to talk a little bit about the purpose of monitoring and evaluation, and give you a small case study wherein she will talk about what we have done with one of the formal education programs. So over to you, Priyanka.
Thank you, Neha. So, yeah, Neha has already told you about the monitoring and evaluation as to why we are doing monitoring and evaluation at the education environment education program. And so I'll speak about it, in terms of how difficult it is to, monitor environment education program. We know we have been implementing the program in the school, and it has been integrated into the school curriculum for such a long period of time. But when we talk about evaluations, we do not see a lot of studies that have come up which directly correlates to environment education, which has led to, a certain kind of impact. So since as a division, we run environment education program for a very long period of time. So we thought of evaluating some of our programs from the last 3-4 years. So in terms of, so basically I'll start with the purpose. Neha has already mentioned the goal as to why we are doing the evaluations. Now I'll tell you the more specific goal when we are talking about the evaluations. So when we are talking about evaluations, we are talking about evaluations at the project level and the organization level as to why do we need evaluations at the project and the organization level. So we are seeing that we want to, develop programs which we can understand that they are more scalable in nature, which we'll only understand when we understand the impact of the program is large, so that it can be, scaled up to, throughout the country. Then we understand that we need to do this. We need to do the evaluation. What are the other criteria that, help us understand that the evaluations are important for us? The other is related to replicable. The program that we are running here at the organization on environment education, is it replicable at other places? That's most important. Then we talk about whether it is measurable or not. Nowadays, when we talk about funding or anything, we go back to the donor, they talk about, not only in terms of outreach or, in terms of engagement as to what is the number of people that you have targeted and how, how much is your outreach. They also try to understand what is the impact of your program. Now, how will you understand the impact of the program? Only when it is measurable. When you have put in indicators which are more measurable in nature, then only you'll be able to understand that the program is measurable and more impactful. You'll be able to make a point that, okay, when we are implementing a particular program, this is the impact which we can tell in numbers, because people understand numbers when it comes to impact assessment. We have a lot of qualitative evaluations also around around environment education, but people do love numbers. And if you go back to donors, they really understand numbers. So that's the whole point of measurable over here. Then we also talk about, the program needs to be impact oriented. It again, come back to the measurable. You can only say that the program is impact oriented when it is measurable in nature. So why are we doing it? So when these all happen, then only we can, go for a larger goal. What is the larger goal of environment education programs that we are doing? That we need to integrate it. We need to go for policy changes in some of the programs that are already running. So this will only happen when you are able to tell that a particular program, has a certain impact and it is going to impact the environment positively in this manner. When you can showcase that your program is doing, your program is capable of, bringing a positive change, then yeah.
Where would you, on the scale of 1 to 10, where would you rate the current environment education in our school system? What would your rating be? Okay, okay.
Like very lightly. So if it was a credit course, they might have taken it a bit more seriously, the kids. So that's why my
Okay,
students.
I want to need more opinions, maybe one or two more
Okay.
in the room.
Because like in our schools up to preliminary, I think 10 or after boards. Yeah, like in my school, I rated till 10, not 10, 9 as an optional subject. But after 10, we do not have that subject as an option paper also, like in West Bengal boards I'm talking. Maybe in ICSE or CBC they have. And in fact, in college also, if we go, they just take it as like environmental studies. Okay, like special paper we have in field of geography, but not as a, like I cannot do it on my master's or geography. I think it should be as a core subject, because environment is on what we are based, right? So I think like, not only in primary way.
Yeah, right. And you, please. Yeah.
Yes. So according to me, I'll rate it around 5 to 6. The reasons are, first, like she said, in higher educations, like in colleges, environment education is a different subject. So for the people who are pursuing some other subjects like economic honors or maybe some other subjects, this subject they can choose as a general elective. So this does not become a major subject. Secondly, in schools or in colleges, we study environment, but it is not practically shown how it has to be done, and it is not accessible. So students just take it for just to pass the subject, and to score it, they do the subject. But reality in how to do how important environment is, it is not taken into consideration. So according to me, I'll rate 5 to 6.
Yeah. So clearly it's not a priority. How can we make it the priority? By showcasing the impact of what we are doing for a policy change, so that there is more emphasis, and hence monitoring and evaluation becomes even more important. And that's the reason we are talking about it. Yes.
Okay, so we have already spoken as to why we want to do evaluations. Now, how are we doing evaluations is through, multi-stakeholder approach for a 360-degree change. What do we mean by this? So when we are doing evaluations, for example, in WWF, when we do evaluations, and as Neha has told, there are multiple stakeholders, that are involved in the program. So when there are multiple stakeholders, you'll have to evaluate at the different levels. For example, when you are doing a program wherein you are orienting teachers, building the capacity of the teachers, you need to also do the evaluations with the teacher as to how much the capacity has, built up over a period of time. Secondly, when you're talking about students, since, we are talking about students will be the change maker and they are the ones who will be impacted by the program and they'll bring the positive change. So what has been the change over the period of time in the students' behavior, attitude, and what are the actions that have that they have taken ultimately, to conserve the environment? That could be there. Plus, as Neha already spoke about, since when we want to implement certain thing, you create norms. So at schools, how will you develop norms? So, you need to create actions or develop actions at the school level, wherein you are, reinforcing those positive actions. And how are you going to, so you need to also measure as to how the school has changed over the period of time when you have started intervening there. And after the intervention, what has been the impact on the school? So the whole program can be, reinforced and the students can again, the whole behavior changes comes into place. Now, so when we are talking about evaluations, we are also talking about what are we measuring in environment education, which is more important. Because, as we say, what are the indicators that you'll measure to showcase that your program has a positive impact? So we say that we'll, over a period of time, the environmental knowledge among people will change. So how will you do that? With a pre and a post evaluation clearly, which will show that there has been a certain change in terms of knowledge. Then there are certain things related to when you talk about awareness and attitude. So it goes back to the, previous slide, which Neha talked about, what are the core of, environment education. So we have taken out some indicators from there itself to understand what the impact is. And, whatever the core of environment education would be, you'll take out some measurable indicators from there and try to evaluate it. So we'll do the awareness, attitude and skills, how it has improved over the period of time. So skill building also becomes an important part in environment education over the period of time when you're implementing certain project, because that will only lead to, action competence and bringing conservation leadership among students and teachers to change the, change the whole school and bring positive change. Then the last and the most important thing that we want to talk about is behavior change. And shift in habits and practices, which we broadly call as behavior change, which requires a more of a longitudinal study, which has a more of a qualitative aspect to it, but we also need to see as to how it changes over the period of time. And we think it cannot be done with a project which is for 3 to 4 months. It is more of a intensive engagement wherein you're implementing for a longer period of time, and then you do a longitudinal study, and then you understand as to what the changes in the behavior has happened over the period of time. Now, so I'll present a case study that we did and what were our learnings from the project which we did for, so we implement a project called as Ek Prithvi model school. Ek Prithvi, now it has turned into a model school. So we did an evaluation for the Ek Prithvi, which aims to bring a 360-degree approach, which is built upon the principle of 360-degree approach, where it talks about school estate, bringing transformation in the school, involving children to bring in conservation leadership so that they bring in positive change, plus also building the capacity of the teachers. So it's, a multi-pronged approach wherein it brings change over a period of time. So So it was basically, we had created tools based on the NEP, and we tried to measure, knowledge, attitude, and behavior, which is over the period of time. So we had used different tools such as interview schedules for, teachers and children, students who were participating in it. We also tried to assess as to how the learnings have gone back to the community. When the student goes back to the home, what are the learnings that have gone back to the community at the community level? So how do we assess it when we are not directly, working with the community? So we thought of bringing it into us. We thought of getting, some kind of idea from a signature camp, wherein we had sent out pamphlets related to a fact written on water, that this is the percentage of, this is the total amount of water that is available on earth, and 2% of only water is available, which is for fresh drinking water. So what are the steps at the community level, at your household level, basically, that you will do to bring change, to bring a positive change? And there were certain options given, like you fix a leaking tap in how many days, what are the different steps that you'll be taking at your individual level? And the children, they had to go back home, give it to their parents and, the neighbors, and get it signed. So people who, thought of, okay, these are the things that we can do, they signed on the pledge. And we, yeah. So we tried to evaluate in terms of what was the community participation, and as to how the learning has transferred from the child to the community. And for the purpose of evaluation, since it was a whole school program for class 1 to 12, but we had taken a sample of, class 3, 5, and 9, wherein we were evaluating. And we were taking, 10 to 15 teachers who were involved in the school with the program. They were, part of the capacity building and, implementing the program at the ground level. So I'll also tell you the sample sizes. So we did baseline and end line. There is, you can see a lot of difference that is there in the baseline and in the end line. It's because of COVID, happened, and there was a so the end line collection was a bit hampered there. So the whole program was then transformed into an online program. It was basically an on-ground program. It was then converted into an online program, transformed into an online program. And we used interview schedules again to understand for students who had started participating. So this was basically for students from class 3 to 9, whosoever has participated on the online, they were taking a baseline when they started the program, and we were doing an end line. So since it was a voluntary program, a lot of people, because it was mandatory for everyone to take the baselines to start the program, they took the baselines, and the end lines, only very few, students, they end up taking, the end lines. So we did the whole evaluations. So I'll talk about more of challenges and learning that had happened during the period. So we found that since we were doing it for class 3, 5, and 9, that was our sample set. And we were implementing the program in the government school. So, low literacy level was an issue, especially for class 3, when we were trying to get the data. So we found that, you should make the tools really simple. If you're doing it with class 3, make it more pictorial in nature, so that, they can, take the assessment easily. Then we also, because we talk about environment education, a lot of qualitative aspects come into picture. So there was also a lot of social biasness that came into picture while we were, designing the tools, because that would lead to, the questions would lead to answers, or the children would automatically know, okay, if there is a question related to when you move out of the classroom, do you switch off lights? So they know that the correct answer is that you should switch off the light. Whether they do it or not, they'll pick on the right answer, because, there's a lot of social biasness. If I do not write it, maybe somebody sees it. But we had already told them that it's a confidential thing. We are not sharing the information. Still, there was a lot of social biasness that came into picture. So the moment when we are designing the tools, we need to try to eliminate as much as biases as we can, so that our tools become effective and the evaluation becomes more impactful in nature. Then we So there was a lot of variation in terms of the data set that we collected. Since you must have seen, we collected data from 10 states. There was some urban setting, there was some rural setting, there was some semi-urban schools. Literacy levels were different at different places. Bihar literacy levels were different than a government school in, Maharashtra, where the literacy level was different for class 3, 5, and 9. So I think when we were evaluated, we did an evaluation overall, which I think did not bring out a lot of result. So we understood, okay, if we would have done a stratified sampling, and we would have, done the analysis, differential analysis, if we could have done, that would have brought a lot of, meaning to the study. Also, when we were doing, the evaluations, if we were doing evaluations in, 50 schools, which were the treatment schools, we had tried to take up similar control schools, 50 control schools. So we were collecting data from 100 schools, but, getting 50 another data from the control schools, because we know over the period of time, even if you don't implement the program in a particular school, there is a gradual learning that happens over a period of time. So, to avoid, because there is a learning that is happening with the students, whereas the intervention is happening. So, in order to avoid the general learning that is happening and to understand more the impact of your program, we had taken the control schools. But, getting data from there was also difficult, because we were clearly not intervening any program over there. So that was an issue over there. So, we need to involve the control schools from the very beginning of the project, when you're implementing the project, and tell them the whole purpose of why we are, doing the evaluations in your school, so that it becomes, more, so that the school becomes more approachable, and you get more data from there. Then also, adequate sampling is quite important when you are presenting a study, because, a sample set is what we refer back to when you are presenting your any study. So people often do question, what is your sample set, when you are saying that this is the kind of change that has happened over a period of time. So representative sampling should have been is a key to present any impact for a particular project. Also, so while we started the study, we thought of doing one-to-one tracking in terms of student, as to what is the attitude changes, what is the behavior change, what is the knowledge that has changed for one-to-one student. But we really found it difficult, because there were hundreds of schools, and, doing one-to-one was not easy for us. So we also understood that, over the period of time, when we are doing any kind of evaluations, an average percentage or a representative data set is, enough to give us a, impactful data, or an insight about the program that you're doing. Also, so we have already spoken about behavior change, since it is a long-term process. Trying to understand behavior change over a period of 6 months, or over a period of 3 months or a year, the time span is quite limited to understand behavior change. So a more longitudinal study is required, and a continuous intervention is required, wherein you can, say with impact that, okay, this is the behavior change that happens when you, intervene with a particular program over a period of time. Yeah, so these have been the challenges and learnings. Yeah, and Neha will add.
Sorry. Just one quick thing, since behavior is very important when it comes to environment education, we have to study behavior. That is one thing that we cannot sort of ignore. But in a normal setting where, an organization is organizing an EE intervention in a school, it becomes very difficult to continue that engagement beyond a year. Then what do? We leave the school with certain, capacity, certain, maybe the tasks to sort of continue, so that they continue to track the behavior and keep giving us data on that, right? In case we exit, if we continue, it is fine. In case we have to exit, then we see to it that in some form or the other, the intervention continues, and the behavior change tracking also sort of continues. So that's where we sort of we sum up some of the challenges that we have faced while doing M&E in through for some of our programs. And this was a formal education program. I would now invite my colleague Shunali and Ambreen to talk about the Citizen Science program, and it is entirely it's going to be a very fascinating presentation because it is all about data, and you would be really amazed to know how data can make each one of you into a scientist. So over to Shunali.
Thank you, Neha. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Shunali. Let me just give me a minute to get set up and I will come back to this mic once. So by the time he sets up my laptop, let me just quickly introduce myself. As Neha outlined, the different teams that work in WWF's Environment Division at the Central Secretariat. So I lead a team called, thank you, Nature Connect. And we connect citizens, children and youth, and also adults to nature, to the natural world through experience-based pedagogy. And for us, what that looks like is nature trails, camps, workshops, courses, biodiversity festivals, and resources and publications. Citizen science is a big part of this as well. So do any of you know what citizen science is? Just raise your hand if you do. Okay, raise your hand if you don't. Okay. Okay, you're going to walk out this room thinking very differently about education and science. Oh, sorry. Okay. No, excuse me. Okay. Okay. So, what do these people look like to you? It's a small room. Feel free to just respond. You can raise your hand or just, do you all recognize any of these people on the screen? Who? Any names? Okay, okay. What do they all have in common, or what field? They are scientists, right? So when I say the word science or scientist, what comes to your mind? Lab. Okay. Sorry, procedure. Researchers, labs, white coats, number crunching, right? This is the typical and conventional idea of what even I was raised to, my understanding of what a scientist is. But I want to tell you today, this is what scientists and science even looks like. Like right now, I could potentially be standing in a room full of scientists. And that is what I'm here to talk to you about today. The whole phenomenon, in fact, I would like to call it a phenomenon, not even a methodology, of citizen science that has taken stage in India in the last 5 years and globally over the last decade or decade and a half. So yeah, citizens, these photos are from some of our work on ground with youth. So citizen science, let me start with a small demo. Okay, I'm going to be switching between the PPT and oh, I need to connect my data. But okay, so citizen science is basically the collection of data or analysis of data by citizens using predetermined templates, which could be a form or an app or a website. And this data goes on to inform science and be used by scientific research across the world. It's not limited to a region or a specific locality, but it is extensive. So what this does to science and data is it democratizes it, meaning it makes it equally accessible and levels the playing field. So there is no more limitations in terms of opportunities or class barriers or caste barriers in terms of how far you get or how you can use these methodologies to in your work. So what citizen science also does, as I said, is the control of knowledge. I think traditionally, maybe 100 years ago, there were gatekeepers of knowledge, right? People who were born into families or into positions of privilege that allow them to study, allow them to pursue higher education. But we live in a world where this is sort of leveling out and democratizing. And so ordinary citizens have more and more claim and control and access to knowledge. What this does is it breaks the barrier between the scientists and the non-scientists. And this is a much longer discussion, but these are certain phenomena that are coming in with internet and technology that's breaking these barriers and making people, giving them people the opportunity to participate in science and research and be at the forefront of groundbreaking phenomena in different fields. Yes, we talked about this. I have to put on my data to show you some very cool things from the web. So let me just do that. Okay. These are hotspots. Yeah. I am not able to get internet. Yeah. It's connected. Okay, great. Okay, so I have already. Okay, so let me show you very simply how this works. Okay. For example, this is a site called iNaturalist. Okay. Have you all heard of iNaturalist? Okay, so iNaturalist is a site that where citizens across the world, not just India, contribute data in terms of observations of nature, plants and animals that they are seeing around them. So on your way here, did you interact with any form of nature? It could be hearing. Okay, anybody? Yes, ma'am. You heard birds, right? You saw trees. So that's it. So just inputting data about the calls you see, about the trees that you are seeing, this forms basis for much scientific research. So let me show you a demo. This is iNaturalist, in which you can input data about any flora, fauna, fungi species that you see. You don't even need to know their names. You don't need to have the scientific knowledge about the names. So what I'm going to do is I have said upload, and this is a Indian white eye. It's a very little pretty bird that you see feeding on insects in canopies. Now I'm going to input this data. I'm going to say Indian white eye. I'm already on WWF's page. So you do need to create a profile on these apps to be able to access and contribute. Indian white eye. Okay, there we go. We have it. I'm going to say I saw this. What date today? 20th of September. It already inputs a time because I'm connected to the internet. Okay, location. You can input, like, so if you're conducting research, you will put latitude and longitude and be very specific, but I'm just going to say Delhi. I'm not going to do this now. This takes time, but as you can see how simple it is to do, right? And if you don't know what species it is, you just upload a photo and scientists across the world will help you ID it. So can you imagine the possibilities of what this brings, not only to people, but also to science? So, yeah. So, yeah. So in India today, what are the various citizen science apps and what are people using citizen science for? We have eBird, which basically looks at bird counts. eBird has nearly 30,000 contributors from across India, and is housed in, is run by an organization called Bird Count India from Bangalore. We have India Biodiversity Portal, which looks at all aspects of biodiversity. We have Village Wildlife Volunteers, which is villagers in semi-rural and urban area, rural and semi-urban areas, track and give scientists and researchers data about the tiger populations that we are seeing. And they also do this with the help of scientists through camera trapping and things. We have Frog Watch. In fact, Frog Watch, through the citizen science app of Frog Watch, they've been able to discover, citizen scientists have discovered 2 new frog species. Okay. We have Big Four mapping, which is initiated by an individual called Jose Lewis and actually tracks 4 venomous species of Indian snakes that are largely responsible for all the snake bites in India. And India has the highest number of snake bite deaths in the world. So it becomes very crucial to map the risk that who's at risk and how they're getting bitten. Then we have Dakshin, which works on marine conservation and is using citizen science to map trends in the catch that fishermen bring in from on their boats, okay, over years. So the beauty of citizen science is they can be longitudinal studies because it is not reliant on one person and a 75-year-old lifespan. It is being done by hundreds of ordinary people across time and space. We have Road Watch, which is initiative managed by Wildlife Trust of India, which is like if you're driving on a highway and you see cats and dogs killed, you also see snakes sometimes. So you can actually click pictures of that, which gives scientists information about what species are most vulnerable to when they are moving across developmental infrastructure and becoming victims to a roadkill. Similarly, we have roadkills by another organization. Beach profiling looks at the characteristics of beaches and coastlines across India. And India has nearly 8,000 kilometers of coastline. This is being run out of Tamil Nadu. The logos you see are apps are the most popular citizen science apps in India. I'm going to run through the rest real quick. You can find all of this on a Google search, but these are the very important citizen science apps that are highly successful in India today. Citizen Sparrow is one of the oldest citizen science apps that began in, I think, 2012. Yeah. Then you have an app in the Andamans by an individual that's looking at invasive species in the islands. So that's the Indian bullfrog, the African snail, and a couple of other birds like the myna. Then you have the Common Bird Monitoring Project, which looks at 18 common species of birds and the changes in their population over time, because there are interactions between these common species, urban ecology, and humans. So how are we affecting them and how do they affect this ecology that we're all part of, the urban ecology? TerraCount is a South Asia bat monitoring program. This is also one of the oldest citizen science projects in India. It started in 2005, and they are tracking about 200 roosting sites of fruit bats in the south. Season Watch and Hornbill Watch India, run by Nature Conservation Foundation. Look, Season Watch is very interesting. All of you, I urge you all to look at Season Watch online. It's very simple. You don't need to have binoculars, magnifying glass. You don't even need, like, you basically monitor, track and share observations of trees. So trees have patterns, right, that change with the season. So they flower, like mango will flower, and then in, like, say, April, then there will be showers. At least in the south where I'm from, the flowering begins in Feb, March, and then the fruiting begins in May. Now, all of these flowering and fruiting patterns that trees exhibit are directly dependent on climate. And as you know, our climate is changing rapidly and extremely. So what Season Watch does is tries to, it may be a long shot, but tries to look at the effects of climate change on ecology by studying something as simple as flowering and fruiting patterns of trees. And if one individual and one scientist or one lab took this up, there is no chance they would be able to do this, because to study something like climate, you need to do it in a very broad and long scale. So it needs to be, so citizen science works perfectly for such areas of study. So those were some of the apps. I can share them with you after this if you all couldn't manage to. I see some of you taking photos, but so let's look at what are some of the engagements through which, do you all have a fair idea of citizen science now? Okay, so it's citizens like you and me, ordinary citizens, contributing data to science. And in India, it's being done on many different themes. I'm only talking about the ecology related themes, but it goes even beyond ecology. So what does this look like in terms of engagements, right? So there are bird counts. For example, there was something called City Nature Count. Or there's a Pongal bird count. I don't know if any of you all heard of the Pongal bird count. So citizens, right now in Kutch, there is a passage migrant bird count happening where over 3 days, citizens from all over India have come and they will spend 3 days in 82 points in Kutch because it's a important stopover site for migratory birds, and citizens will count birds. And there is no training, no special scientific skill that they need to have, but simply just dedication and love for nature and like to commit their time. So bird counts, surveys, bio blitzes are a very cool sort of new age event where it's similar to what I said. You say 3 days and it's almost competitive. So there was something called a City Nature Challenge that happened in April this year that was started in, I think, California. But now cities across the world do it. And so cities across the world compete to get maximum observations, maximum checklists. And this year, several Indian cities participated. We also participated, and Hyderabad topped the list in India with checklists. And in the last 5 years, India has topped global lists for bird counts as well. So like this, there are global events. There are special days. For example, in July, we celebrated Moth Week. Currently, as we speak, September is Big Butterfly Month, where citizens and educators across India are monitoring butterflies, going out and capturing data, contributing it to these apps, and also in this manner. So, okay, now I can tell you all of these different ways in which we are initiating citizen science, but I would like to hear from you, having heard of this concept, what you think the value could be to science. Okay, if you could think about that a little bit. So just to finish up on other kinds of engagement, tracking conflict, as I told you about the Village Watcher app, or Snakebite, I told you about this roadkill reporting. This helps us analyze trends. It helps create biodiversity atlases, biodiversity registers, and in education and research. Okay. So could you, I'm just going to pause for a second and ask you what you think this value could be. Like if you have a citizen science app where 30,000 citizens are contributing data every day. I'm not sure what your backgrounds are, but I assume you're from research or education in the field of sustainability and conservation. Sure. So do you think this is relevant to the work that you do? Yes, you can raise your hands if you want to. Yes, sir.
There are huge gaps in terms of how you can decipher trends. For instance, the first report said that the Indian peafowl population is increasing. And we did some occupancy modeling exercise on peafowl. We realized it is simply because it is a large size bird. It is seen more by people. So it is the reporting of peafowl is more in different checklists in comparison to small size birds like Marshall Iora or white eye we saw. So sometimes we have to go with a little bit of caution in deciphering trends of population decline when you're looking at citizen science data. Otherwise, if you're looking at spread and distribution, you have enormous amount of data available that can be deciphered. But how to decipher the data? I think trend analysis we should shy away from. Sure. That's one thing.
No, I definitely agree with you. So one thing to keep in mind, which is what I was going to come to towards the end of my presentation, is that what you are saying, I totally agree with, but that is the onus of researchers and people who analyze data and not the contributors.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. The contributors are giving the data in the in their understanding. I think the only caution that there we have that they give right ID and all those things.
Yeah,
but which mostly people do because now we have Google Lens and a lot of other apps available to help them doing so.
Yeah.
So, but
Google Lens and also all of these apps that I've spoken about have very tight reviewing systems and systems of review.
eBird 2 has that. I'm associated with eBird, so I know it has a very good review system. The other thing is that the amount of noise that can be there in all of these data sets, that's something that, as you said, researchers who are deciphering trends and who are doing other sorts of analysis using this data, they should be careful about.
No,
so
definitely.
There is a word of caution that we should have when deciphering citizen science data. Otherwise, it's an excellent source of getting voluminous data with least amount of effort in field.
Yeah, and
So-
that's from a research point of view.
Research point.
We are looking at it from a completely conservation education point of view in terms of activating people to connect with nature.
is
And the,
Absolutely fine.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So as we've been speaking about the state of Indian birds, the picture you see in the middle is a report that has been happening annually for the last 3 years, completely based on citizens' data from eBird. And what the SOIB or the state of Indian birds has mapped is has been able to map by citizen science sourced data is the range, trends, and conservation status of several species, the distribution and population trends in the long term. And this report this year, it was just launched at the in late August last year in Delhi. The report was written about 942 species from 30 million observations from 30,000 bird watchers across the country. And these bird watchers don't work in labs or wear lab coats. Some of them are as young as 10 years old. So this is the power of citizen science that is emerging as a very crucial tool in supporting science, especially in areas of data deficiency, in areas where one lifetime is not enough to solve certain problems, and it's filling a big gap that was existing in traditional science previously. Yeah. So yeah, these are some highlights from the report that I wanted to share with you all. As I said, 942 species were analyzed in this report. And for some context, India has about 1,300 species of birds. So this is the majority of those bird species. What was, as this gentleman said, the peacock population has been seen to increase, but as so that is a different conversation about analyzing the data. Today, we're talking about more how do you engage youth in citizen science initiatives. So one key thing that came out of this report is 178 species were classified as from a different priority than what was earlier thought. So you all may know about the IUCN classification of species. That is not from such extensive data. So now with everyday observations at a much more granular scale, the status of species is also, we have some basis to reevaluate this. Candida, let's take, let me show you some other really very interesting outputs from eBird data. Do you all know? Okay, you all can pick a species from here. I have Indian Pitra, Amur falcon, and pied cuckoo. These are all migratory birds that come to India. So if you see on the right-hand side, the points in this map are points, data points from where citizens have contributed observations or checklists. I'm going to just click on the pied cuckoo. Okay, I already have it open. So the State of Indian Birds was launched this year, and associated with it is an app, a web platform called MINA. I think it's Mapping My Neighborhood Birds. It's a short form for, it's an abbreviation. And so the pied cuckoo, can you see this movement happening on the screen? So the pied cuckoo is a migratory bird that comes from all the way from Africa to South, Central, and Northern India. The little box you see there are the months of the year. You see that bar moving across that line. So that's January, February, March. Right now, the pied cuckoo in September, where we are, is now across India. So the pied cuckoo is a very iconic species, and it is known as the harbinger of rain. Because as you will see, now it is retreating. We'll wait for the year to start. So the pied cuckoo, only when citizens' data was analyzed and they could like zoom out and see the trends of the movement of this migratory bird, did they realize that they could juxtapose the migration of the pied cuckoo was almost exactly in the same synced with the Indian monsoon, the southwest monsoon. So you see the southwest monsoon around say May. Now we're in May. You see how the pied cuckoo fills up the entire country and then retreats back, which is a similar pattern that the southwestern monsoon follows. So these kind of observations and trends we were able to come to with the level of data that we were able to get with citizen science. And so, and also a map like this, like how could this would have never been possible with 1 or 2 people or 1 lab working on 1 species, even if they did it for 3 lifetimes, right? So this is only possible with the quantum of data that comes from citizen science. So another thing that came with Mina is that comes with Mina, and these are all absolutely free open source tools that you can use in your work or to learn more about birds. So, for example, these are some ways in which the citizen science, the report and Mina has analyzed the data. You see for the pied cuckoo, the different colors on the Indian map, I don't know if it's very clear, but the purple is where the bird is resident. That means it stays through the year. The orange is where the bird is a summer migrant. The yellow is where it's an autumn or passage migrant, which is the right now for Delhi, we are in the passage migrant period. And the blue is a winter migrant. So yeah, this kind of, and then on the left, you see over here, they're able to come to conclusions on the long-term trends for this species. What is the current trend? Is it stable? Is it reducing? Is it increasing? Okay. What is the distribution size of the species you're also able to get? And other conservation categories, which is the Indian Wildlife Protection Act and IUCN. The other very amazing thing is you can even look for just your state. So if you are working in, say, Karnataka, and you want to see the population and trends of pied cuckoo in Karnataka, you can even put a lens of your state and look from a very regional, like, so there is a lot of room to explore and play in the data analysis and consumption with such apps. I'm going to go back. Okay. Oh, I have one right. So yeah, so what is the value of such data? It definitely makes systematic long-term monitoring more feasible for science. It allows us to do, as I've shown you, population and landscape studies at a macro level, very, very macro level. It is very useful for research and academic publishing. Also conservation planning and management. So now with all this data from the State of Indian Birds reports, researchers, policymakers actually have, conclusive data based on which you can make conservation plans for national parks, for urban spaces, for parks and gardens, because with Season Watch, you're able to show the relationship between trees and climate that can inform urban landscaping. For example, it can inform what you do with native or invasive species. So policy advocacy and governance has great value in citizen science. Environmental law and legislation. There was a case in, I think, a couple of years ago in Chennai, in which eBird data formed a major part of the case, the unfolding, as well as the verdict. Species range. So you're able to look at species from 5 years, the range of a species 5 years ago and today, how that has changed, what has contributed to those changes. Also science communication and education, which is what we do and how we use citizen science. New discoveries, as I told you, Frog Watch discovered 2 species of frogs. About 4 or 5 years ago, a new species of spider was also discovered by a citizen scientist, which is an ordinary person. There's also the range of some species of snakes were also extended on account of citizen science and evaluation of the status, what I shared. Tracking conflict, roosting and nesting sites through the other apps that I shared. Okay. So now I'm going to hand it over to Amreen to tell you a little bit more about how WWF uses citizen science to engage youth.
Thanks, Shonali. Hi, everyone. Is it working? Yeah. Okay, so Shonali in her session covered what is citizen science, what are the tools available which are readily available for free, and usually do not have any age bar. So anybody as young as 8 or 10 years old can become a citizen scientist. But here, I'll just correct this, not specifically youth. Citizen science is for everybody. it is not barred by age. So in the coming slides, I'm just going to talk about how WWF as an organization is facilitating citizens to become volunteers and contribute as citizen scientists. So this is one of the project that runs across Asia and Australia. And this is heronry count. Basically, we engage volunteers, we train, kind of orient them, I won't say train them. They go out and they conduct this count for us. It's primarily, kind of doing a count of nesting sites of water birds. This is the picture from Kerala. We do monitoring surveys of moths. It's basically, there's a National Moth Week organized every year, once in a July. And here we are recording what species and what is the count of moths that are there during the monsoon time. There's another example of Asian water bird census that's conducted across the world, usually in January month. Here's another example of plastic blitz. So it's basically, as the name suggests, it's people go out for cleanup drives. So you must have seen a lot of organizations conduct cleanup drives, but here we come up with a different way of doing it. So these are the pictures from Sanjay One. Have you ever been to Sanjay One? Anybody? All right. So what we do is we usually couple up our drives with plastic collection initiatives. There's an app called Literati. So I'm not sure anybody has heard of Literati app. So what it is, again, generating and collecting data, what kind of plastics are out there, which is littered by people. So here we are not only collecting the plastic and removing it from the, the city forest, but we are also recording the data, whether it's a chips packet, whether it's a chocolate wrapper or a biscuit wrapper. So, it's a beautiful, it's freely available. You can download it on your mobile phones. And the beauty of this app is that you are documenting that as you were walking into a city forest, you pick up a wrapper that was found there. You can tag the company. For instance, if it is Bisleri or if it is Cadbury or Nestle, you can tag it. It geotags the location. You can just mention what product it is. And the idea is that the entire data is getting entered into a repository, and ultimately it is going back to the businesses to enhance and work towards, taking it back. So businesses ultimately are responsible for the waste they're producing. So this is another initiative where citizens are actively working. Here's another example of a citizen science movement. Here what you see on the screen is a picture from Mumbai. And we usually conduct marine walks where we call upon a naturalist who take our group of volunteers on a walk. They explore the marine life that's found on the shore and they document the data. And again, as you can see, we never miss a chance to collect the waste and remove it from the system. There's another project which is currently ongoing, wetland biomonitoring. Here, we have been conducting this program for almost 4 years now. And the idea is that we document the observations and record the data of dragonflies and damselflies. I will leave that on Shonali to share how important dragonflies and damselflies are. But there's another program where citizens are actively contributing in collecting the data, and which is ultimately fed into the system to kind of analyze what kind of and what type of species and in what magnitude they're available. Okay, so here I'm showing you a portal. So Shonali did mention there is iNaturalist, there is eBird available. This is another Indian portal, India Biodiversity Portal. And here's a page that you're seeing for the Dragonfly Festival. This is the portal where the data that everybody collects as volunteers is fed. And these are the kind of points. So the program runs across 21 wetlands in India. And these are the points from where our volunteers as citizens has contributed in collection of the data. And these are some of the top contributors you see on the screen. There's Sayak, Satish Chandra, and Sonu. And as Shonali mentioned, you don't need to be a scientist. You don't need to be from a science background. Everybody sitting here in the room has the power in their hand. That's a mobile phone. So whenever you're going out, you see a bird, you see a tree, you see any insect, be it a bee or a beetle, or if you are kind of going out in the wild, Just capture it, and there are polls available where you can upload the data and add to the scientist community to further research and analyze. And so again, it shows the trend of how different species were documented, the counts of these species in 2021, and how it, further enhanced in 2022. And here is the portal. So I would just like to mention as, again, reiterating that citizen science is not limited to any age group. But this program, which WWF is running, is unfortunately for people above 18 years of age. So all you need is to be an adult, 18 years, but upwards, there is no age limit to that. There's a website at the bottom of the screen, which is peopleforplanet.wwfindia.org. You can sign up as a volunteer. We conduct a lot of programs. Currently, there's a program running in Sanjayvan where we are documenting and surveying what kind of species are found during monsoon, spring, winter seasons, and which will be further analyzed. So we keep putting up projects on this portal. So if you have the interest, and I'll also like to mention, you don't need to have specific time to volunteer and to contribute as a citizen science. If you're working, if you're busy, just look out of the window. If you want 10 minutes, if your manager is bothering you, look out of the window, whatever you see, document it. If you're sitting in your college, board of lecture, just look out, capture it. If you're sitting in your home, sipping a cup of coffee or tea, you can do it from there. So you don't need a skill, you don't need specific time. All you need is the intent and interest, okay? So here's one portal which you can use and associate with us if you want to contribute. And back to you, Sonali.
So just really quickly, the last few slides, because we're being asked to wrap up. Ethics and data sensitivity, which is something along the lines of what we were talking about earlier. But basically, if you're a scientist or researcher and using this data, you have to keep in mind the species about which these are, and also the communities who live alongside these species. Because, for example, I'll give you a small example like nesting sites, if like there's a citizen science initiative called Hornbill Watch, but it is not wise or safe to have data about bird nest locations circulating in the public domain. So these are certain aspects where we have to maintain some kind of confidentiality and sensitivity when it comes to sharing and accessing this data. Let me end on one very, I was showing you one last very cool functionality of Mina. Let's do, so basically, okay, let's go back. Okay, so in Mina, now all of the data has been inputted by citizens. They have been analyzed by eBird, and they have been analyzed and fed into this Mina website, so that citizens can or any kind of stakeholder can access it in different forms. So now what we're going to do is generate a bird list using citizen science data. Okay, let's do it for here right now where we stand today. So let's say name of report, let's say ICSE 2023. Okay, that's today. Date is today is 19th of September 2023, September. I hope you can see what I'm doing. September 20th. You can either input and choose your geography, or you can also just draw and use this polygon tool and draw. Now we're in Delhi. I'm trying to zoom into Delhi. So I'm going to use the polygon tool and just circle IHC where I think IHC is at least. I'm just going to circle Delhi. Okay, let's do. Okay, this is kind of close, right? Let's just do this already. I've used the polygon tool. I have to go south. I'm here, right? Okay. Okay, I'm just taking this whole area. And I want to see what birds are around us right now. Okay, so this is the area, 20th September currently. And I'm going to say, I'm going to just do yesterday simply because I don't know if So birds of ICSE 2020. No, I think it will come. Yesterday's date. I wanted yesterday's date. But look, these are the species from yesterday. So yesterday here, if you all attended this conference, these are the observations that were uploaded on eBird. There were a total of 287 species reported in that polygon that we chose yesterday. This is the report of the conference of the birds that were outside while you were sitting the conference, out of which were 106 migratory, which were in the passage migrant season. There were 13 threatened species, 48 high priority species, and then you can go on. And I mean, it is endless, the things that you can do with this data. A checklist of the endemic species around you, then a checklist of the water bird congregations, the most common species. So I hope this was able to give you a sense of the potential of citizen science and how you can use it as a tool for science and to engage communities. We're going to be around if you have any questions. We don't have time to take it now. I'm already getting stared at. So thank you for listening. And yeah, I hope that you all will, some of you will become contributors and also join us in our work.